Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. Our mission is to prepare all of our students to lead lives of joy and purpose as knowledgeable, creative, and compassionate citizens of a global society. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We are always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes an opportunity for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual, personnel, and confidential matters. We desire that our meetings provide useful opportunities for communication between the board and the community. Thank you for attending. I'll now ask our board secretary to read the notices.
Thank you. As required under the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 1046 et sequentia, adequate notice was given for calling this meeting. It was authorized by the Board of Education and forwarded to the municipal clerk, Princeton Packet, and the Times on January 10th, 2019, and distributed to the schools and others on the standard distribution list. The board reserves the right to enter into executive session during all meetings of the Board of Education. Board Policy 2230, recording devices, requires that we inform those attending this meeting that the proceedings are being recorded on video. This meeting is being video recorded and may also be live streamed. The representative of the sending district is authorized, Peter Katz, welcome, is authorized to vote on such matters that affect spending districts, students, or affect the governance of the Princeton Public Schools, as more specifically designated in NJSA 18A 38.8.1. In the event that this statute is amended, the law shall take precedence over the bylaw. Sending district votes pertaining to personnel actions refer to high school, central admin, and district-wide staff only. Votes otherwise are considered abstentions.
I now ask that you call the roll, please.
Beth Barrand,
Here.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Here.
Daniel Dart,
Here.
Jessica Deutsch,
Here.
Bill Hare,
Here.
Betsy Calbabaglio,
Here.
Brian McDonald,
Present.
Greg Stankiewicz,
Here.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder,
Present.
Evelyn Spahn, Peter Katz. I just
Might
said
get that for a
that.
meeting or two, but
Interesting. This
I've
is
been
supposed
called
to
a
be,
lot
that was
worse.
supposed to be taken out of there. We have a quorum.
I am here.
Peter Katz is here.
you.
Thank you.
The first item on our of matters tonight is the adoption of minutes. The first one being the adoption of minutes for October 29th, 2019. Can I have a motion? Brian, second? Jess? Any discussion? If not, can I have a show of hands of those in favor of adopting the minutes of October 29th? Yes?
No abstentions.
No abstentions?
One abstention. Motion passes.
Motion passes. Second item is the adoption of minutes for the November 12th, 2019 meeting. Can I have a motion? Dan, second? Bill? Any discussion? All in favor? Show of hands.
Motion passes.
Michelle, are you voting?
No.
Okay, you're staying, okay. Thank you. The next item is the affirmation of the HIB case. This is the resolve that the Board of Education affirm the superintendent's recommendation regarding HIB case numbers 202-427, 0614-2019, after conducting a parent hearing to appeal the superintendent's recommendation at November 12th, 2019 executive session board meeting. Can I have a motion? Brian, second. Michelle, any discussion? On this one, do we take a roll call or do we just take a show of hands?
We should do a roll call.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Just give me 1 second. Beth Barrand,
Abstain, I did not attend.
Debbie Bronfeld,
No.
Dan Dart,
no.
Jessica Deutsch, Bill Hare,
No.
Betsy Calbabaglio,
No.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Greg Stankiewicz,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck-Ponder,
No.
Peter Katz is abstention. Motion does not pass.
Next item is the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report. This is a consent item, so I will just keep moving on that if there's no discussion. The next item is our student board members report, which we've moved up to the beginning of the meeting so that we can ensure that our students try to get some reasonable rest. So please proceed.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So in our last meeting, we discussed the plan we had for our first official survey as student body liaisons. We posted this survey on each grade's class website last Thursday, and after discussing with our student council advisors, we decided to wait to include the survey results in a student liaison board report until student council has met and had a chance to look over the results, analyze them, and then discuss them in a group. The survey's release date was later than originally anticipated, but students will have an ample amount of time to respond to the survey before student council meets next, and will have more than enough time to review and analyze the data prior to the Board of Education meeting on December 17th. 17th? Excuse me, yeah. With that said, we are getting a lot of responses. Already more than a third of our students have responded, so that's really great.
Yeah.
Especially thanks to our promotion on Facebook, in school, Instagram, all of the social media types. But before we get into our progress we've made through the survey, we'd like to give a brief update on what Student Council has been working on since we last met. Student Council has had a very active few weeks since the last Board of Education meeting. The prom committee reconvened on Tuesday of last week to discuss possible themes, scheduling, catering, and other activities that they're hoping to incorporate into prom this year. The committee discussed about 30 possible themes and narrowed it down to their top 5, which will be published in a poll later this year, just looking to see what juniors and seniors are going to want, and they're going to vote as their class. The committee's next meeting is on Tuesday, November 26th, which is when they will begin finalizing the poll and getting it ready for release after the break. As Thanksgiving approaches, student council members will donate Thanksgiving food baskets to the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen, which is actually tomorrow we're doing that. So hopefully we're really excited because I think everyone signed up, so it should be really well. This is something that student council does every year, and it always turns out to be really successful. Student council has other festive events planned for the holiday season that are designed to promote community building and also student engagement throughout the PHS community. As we approach winter break, student council will be selling their annual candy grams that students can send to one another. And we'll also be hosting a Happy Holiday Sweater Day on December 20th. So I know none of you go to school at PHS, but if you want to, in spirit, you can wear your Happy Holiday Sweater. Or anything, yeah. Happy Holiday Sweater, yeah. So I'll pass it over to Charlie now.
So as for the survey, because of the later start of the survey, because of the difficulties we had getting it approved and whatnot, we are now looking at it more of as a way to shape more sweeping, big picture plans for the new year. So in recent years, student council has faced difficulty planning events that were widely attended by the student body. And the goal of this survey is to have a way for us to reach out to the student body and hear what types of events they would be most interested in attending, and when they would like to attend them. And in trying to gear our events more towards students' preferences, we asked them about the specific types of events they would be interested in attending, such as dance, fundraisers, sports competitions, etc. We asked them what factors discouraged their attendance in the past. This is actually a topic of discussion at the Board of Education Candidates Forum. I think a question was asked about student-run activities that are out of reach due to price, and I think that's really a major problem. And I think analyzing this information will help student council avoid making these mistakes in future events. We also asked what we can do to incentivize, what incentives would encourage people to attend events, and among the options were food, raffle prices, apparel. We also wanted to find out how students would prefer to hear about events, so we asked them what forms of advertisement and promotion they would find most compelling. This could include social media posts, flyers around the school, advertisements on the TVs. And to conclude the survey, we had 2 free response sections and allowed students to write freely about how they think the student council could improve upon its current events to make them more popular among the student body, and to give any suggestions that they had for future events or projects. So the main purpose of the survey is to more effectively facilitate discussion between the student council and the student body. And Our advisors for student council tasked us with creating a stronger sense of community and encouraging more school-wide engagement in our events and projects. So the goal of the survey is to further that goal, but we also think that by building community and increasing school-wide engagement, it can contribute into a lot of the larger issues that we wanted to tackle. And we're planning on keeping the survey live through next week, after which we'll meet with the rest of student council to analyze the data so we can present it to you at the next meeting.
Also, a quick last reminder. So for the next meeting, we'll most likely either have printed out versions of the survey for you, all of you, or we can share it, whatever is easiest, just so you guys can see how we formatted it
Great.
and how it was shown to the students.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Charlie and Mateo. I didn't introduce you properly in the beginning. That's
Thank
Charlie
you.
Briggs and Mateo Constantine. And we do appreciate it, and it's kind of nice to have you guys at the beginning of the meeting because, again, why are we here? We're here for the students, and we're here to support you and all of your colleagues. So thank you so
Thank you very much.
Can I ask them a
Yeah.
question really quick?
Yes.
When you bring that that printed version of the survey, could you do it electronically so then the audience can
Sure.
see it
We
as
c-
well
we-
and sharing it?
Yeah, we could share it as a Google Doc, and maybe we could put it up there. Actually, or we could just pull it up on the LMS, which is our Haiku Learning, where we access our homework.
Okay,
And then we can show you the data through there.
perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And it's exciting to hear that you've got a larger survey, I think.
Oh,
that,
yeah.
You know, and I'm sure that's thanks to your efforts. It's probably hard to get everybody on the different medias, but that's helpful.
Yeah, it is, especially because not everyone has Facebook unless they're like for a club, but yeah.
So great. Well, we look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So next up is the President's Report, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet tonight. We all are, first of all, welcome Peter again, your first full meeting of the board. We're very happy to have you at the table with us, representing Cranberry. Thank you. It's a busy time for the schools, for our children, for our students, and for the board. In the schools, I think we all have been going to various different events, and there's been plays, and there's been concerts, and I know I've seen student groups around town singing at different events or being at the events. It's exciting. I feel like there's really some good spirit, and excited to hear that you guys are finding ways to increase that even more. On the board side, we have been continuing to have our outreach meetings. We met with the municipality again last week as a regular quarterly meeting, going through various issues of shared interests, including crossing guards and traffic and you name it. We talked through, we spent a good hour or two with them going through everything that we're all working on. We have our planners coming in this Thursday and Friday, Mylone and McBroom. I think Steve will speak a little bit more in detail about that, talking about gathering data, verifying data that we've already collected, meeting with people who are working on those issues so we can transition over to them. We also, an exciting thing last Friday, again, we had our second meeting, some of us from the board with Steve's team and with some of our teachers and principals and administrators, and we all went to it's called the Labor Management Institute at Rutgers, and we are now one of 24 districts in the state that are doing this kind of collaborative work as a district, and I think we as a board are supportive of our staff in doing that. And it's the idea of how do we problem solve together. It's a new kind of paradigm, I guess, in the school world. Some of us from the corporate world would say, well, you know, collective decision-making is going on in other places, maybe in a different way. But now the schools are starting to look at that, and there's actual research that shows how it affects student achievement, teacher retention, wellness, people's satisfaction about the schools, to have everyone involved in the decision-making together. And so we've been going and getting some really good free support, and I think we're all kind of excited to be working together. And one of the ways that as a board we are supporting this is we're trying to bring others into our committee structure. And I think tonight we're going to hear from our policy committee, where we're trying to bring our associations in as non-voting members so that we hear from them, and we're covering in our committee also issues that are of interest and of concern to our staff and teachers, so that we're getting information going in multiple directions, which I think makes us stronger as an organization. So that's exciting, and we're going to hear some really good committee reports tonight about all the other work that's going on. We have meetings all the time. Everyone around this table is spending many hours every week working on school matters, and we're all grateful for that. And I'd just like to then turn it over to Jess. I think you want to say something about gratitude?
I'll keep with a very brief theme for this evening. Very briefly, I will say I had the pleasure of visiting the Riverside Garden on Saturday, where a peace garden is being created, and it is absolutely beautiful. And I encourage all of my board colleagues to stop by and see the plans and what's happening there, with so much support of staff and parents and children. And it's everything we can be grateful for right there in my backyard, literally. And I will also just announce the launch. Thank you very much to our staff for the Gratitude at PrincetonK12.org address, which is open and ready for business, and accepting input from the board and staff and community about what we can be grateful for in this district. So I encourage you to submit, and we'll continue to report and share our gratitude.
Thank you, Jess. Steve, would you like to give your report?
Absolutely. Kurt, if you can pull that up. While you're doing it, I'll begin with my own gratitude. Shout out to Chandra Cameron, the drama director at JW, and to all of the JW staff and students who were involved this weekend in their play, which took us in a tour around the world in 8 plays. And Chandra, in her director's notes, I just wanted to note this. She said, "When I chose this fall play, my mind was focused on the importance of equity and diversity. In these ever-changing times of cultural dissonance and unrest, I decided to direct my educational attentions to the Princeton Public Schools community mission." And she focused specifically on that portion of our mission that strives to create compassionate citizens of a global society. And the play was a wonderful set of vignettes, comedies that took us from South Africa to Brazil to Thailand to Ireland, Japan, around the world. So my gratitude to the JW drama team.
Another joyful performance.
It was, truly, yeah.
That's great.
They're hilarious.
Yeah.
And do I have a clicker? Okay. I have 3 topics to try and move through tonight. One is about the challenge success work that we have been doing, the survey that we're about to re-give to our students at the high school, and the space framework that guides that effort. The CUSAC district review process. This is on the agenda for tonight. It's the quality single accountability continuum. Essentially, it's the way in which the state monitors all districts and reviews that we're providing a thorough and efficient education. And then the last thing, Beth, you actually already mentioned this, the site visit by our planning firm. I'll just say a few words about that. So I'll lead into the challenge success work by noting that I had the honor of presenting to school board representatives from Somerset and Mercer County this past Thursday. Thank you to Greg and to Beth for being there. But the question that they asked to us to present on, and I was there with Bert Mendelbaum, a doctor from town, was on this later start time. And I had 11 steps to a later start time that other schools might consider following. And I'm not going to take this group through all 11. I want to focus on the first few and then talk about the importance of the challenge success work that we're doing. So the first step was we didn't start a later start time by itself and in a vacuum. We really led with our values, which was our mission of preparing all students to lead lives of joy and purpose. We had a mission goals around wellness, obviously, and every child known. And so we have begun this work for years. We started in 2015 with our revised mission statement and with our strategic plan. And we have been trying to make strides in the area of student wellness for the past several years, so that when we actually began to look at a later start time, it wasn't a surprise to our community. The step 3 was, wait, go back a step. I think I'm missing lead with values, lead with data. I'm missing my data slide. So the data slide really had to do with gaining information from the chat. It's the next slide? Oh, it's out of order. Okay. I'll go back to that. So lead with values and then lead with data. And we really wanted to find out, we knew anecdotally the kind of pressure that our students were under, but we gave this survey out of Challenge Success Organization, Stanford University. It was administered in December of 2016. And it was a survey that was focused on all of these areas: academic engagement, stress, use of free time, perception of homework. And we learned a lot. Like, we knew nationally that students were under stress at the high school level. We had heard anecdotally about the pressure that our own students were feeling. But when we got the data, we really were able to see that more than 80% of our students expressed feeling often or always stressed by their schoolwork. Only 15% indicated they were just truly loving their learning. So the survey looks at engagement in 3 ways. It looks at behavioral engagement, turning your work in, showing up to class. It looks at intellectual engagement, your ability to intellectually mesh with the curriculum and be challenged by it. But then it looks at affective engagement, which is that real true love of what you're learning. And only 15% indicated that. 3 to 3.5 hours of homework per night, 6 to 6.5 hours of sleep, when we know the CDC recommends 8 to 10 for adolescent students. So we did have some areas of concern around sleep, around homework, around stress. And yet we also had some high points. Students reported a high level of feeling cared about by their teachers and the administrators at the high school. And 73%, almost 3 out of 4, reported getting that high level of affective engagement from their extracurricular activities. So the challenge then was, how do we take all the things that you are experiencing after school, the intellectual and affective engagement, and put that into the school day. So go back one, this one, okay. So we first, the step was to form a committee, and we charged them to get that passion from the extracurricular activities, the after-school experiences, into the school day, to enhance physical and emotional wellness. And we really looked at this framework from the Stanford University Challenge Success Program called SPACE. And the S, as the board knows, the S is for schedule and use of time. The P is for performance-based, project-based learning. The A is for alternative or authentic assessment. The C is for a climate of care. The E is for education of the broader community. And they were charged to consider everything, regardless of the financial impact or the logistical impact. And so which direction do I move in? This way. They came away with some initially proposed strategies, a lot on the instruction and assessment side, project-based learning, and then a lot with schedule and time, because we didn't just move to a later start time, we changed the entire schedule at the high school, as you gentlemen know. Rotating periods, fewer periods, longer periods. We even had this wild idea of restructuring the whole year with trimesters or 4 weeks on and 1 week off. We haven't got to that one yet, but we did focus on a later start time, among others. And we're grateful for that work. Moving through all the other steps to get how we got to a later start time, the 10th of the 11 was to evaluate the impact. So we put this into place this last year. This is our second year of a later start time and the schedule. And so what we saw in year 1 was that our tardies dropped by 37%. We had anecdotal reports from teachers that students were a whole lot more awake, particularly in their first period class. Students reported that they felt better. But we really want, as a next step, to re-administer that Challenge Success survey and to analyze the data. So we are going to be doing that hopefully December 2nd at the high school. Last year we had nearly 90% of the high school students who took the survey. It takes a while for us to get the results back from Stanford. They come back to us typically in February, and they norm reference them. So they look at, there's almost 200,000 students across the country who have taken this survey from private and public institutions, schools, and so they can kind of let us know how our district, how our school compares with other schools. And so we are excited to take that step to evaluate the changes that we've made and to get more information and to continue to move forward in this direction. So I wanted to share that with the board and with the community. Any questions about
I
that?
just noted, December 2nd's the first day back from Thanksgiving break. I don't know if attendance is as high that day as it might be other days. That's just something to consider.
Okay,
If that-
I'll mention that. All right, shifting to the New Jersey CUSAC Performance Review. As I said, that's on the agenda tonight under curriculum. The purpose of the review is to evaluate all districts throughout the state on their thorough use of their provision of thorough and efficient education, and they're evaluated in five areas. So instruction and program, personnel, governance, fiscal management, and operations. And then within each of those categories, there's a long list of very detailed indicators, as you'll see on the performance, the self-assessment that we have tonight. Here's just a quick listing of what each of the DPRs, District Performance Review Areas, contains. So instruction and program, meeting the state's measure for student performance and progress. So as we're looking at those indicators, it's not just our performance this past year, but it's our progress over multiple years with various demographic groups. So that's what they're looking at. Graduation rates, our ability to analyze the data, to have our curriculum aligned to state standards, et cetera, to provide tiered systems of support. Fiscal management, monthly reports, standard operating procedures, annual audits, which we just had done, management of grants, capital funds, implementing the facilities plan, and there's like 2 indicators in there that talk about the sort of facilities checklist. I think it's only 7 points, but it's taken our facilities director days to go into classrooms and make sure that, weeks, just weeks, that there's 18-inch clearance from the top of shelves to the ceiling and all kinds of very detailed things that have to be in place. Analyzing fiscal cash flow, et cetera. Overseeing budget is governance, so this is a lot of what the board does. Is overseeing the budget process, developing policies, evaluating the superintendent, reviewing administrative contracts, operations, implementing policies, attendance, alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, HIB, reporting to NJ SMART, and this is the Student Safety Data System, is the SSDS, maintaining a positive school climate, providing transportation, supplies, those kinds of things for staff, and then personnel, finally, high quality professional development, supporting novice teachers, promoting quality supervision. So those are the sort of a brief synopsis of each of the areas. We then go through a process. So the first step of the process is the completion of this self-assessment. And this is where the administrative team primarily looks at each of the areas and goes through all of the indicators and does our own self-assessment as to how we did, whether we felt we met the indicator or not. We then have an on-site verification by a team from the County Office of Education. So they are going to be coming to our district February 19th. And during that time, they will be looking for evidence. They're going to be examining our curriculum. They're going to be walking through our facilities. They're going to be actually looking to see evidence for every single indicator. Either some of it will be electronic, some of it we'll have to provide for them in tangible form. But it's a very comprehensive process. Once they complete their review, that's shared with the Commissioner of Education. The target in all areas is 80% or better. If we don't achieve that in any particular area, we have to implement a improvement plan. And the reporting of the final scores in each area, probably spring of 2020. It's been a while since we've been through it, and we're going through it with a new team, so that's tentative. And this is a repeat every 3 years process, rinse and repeat. So that's the process. It's a time-consuming and important one for us as a district, and that's the initial step, that self-assessment that's been undertaken by the administrative team, is on the agenda tonight. And then the last thing, just to underscore what Beth had said, we have contracted with a professional planning firm, Malone and McBroom. They have spent the last month in a detailed analysis of our data, projected student enrollments, community growth. They're looking at our sending areas. They're looking at our transportation, bus routes, the functional capacity of our buildings. They've got a lot of information from Scott and Spiesel, our architects. They're looking at our educational programming. And they will be here this Thursday to ask questions about that data, to meet with some of the people around the table here, to meet with some of our administrators. Annie, I think you have a meeting with the gentleman who's responsible for the educational programming. And then on the 22nd, that Friday, they will then start a tour of our schools. They're going to begin with the elementary and may get to the middle school and high school, but they may have to come back in December to do that. So that's it.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you, Steve. And I must say, I was at the, on Thursday evening, Steve presented, as you talked about, the change in our start time and how we got, the whole process where we got, how we got to that point. And he was invited to be the speaker at our county meeting for the New Jersey School Board Association. It was the Somerset and Mercer County group. And it was interesting because the other districts were there and were very interested in what has been done here in Princeton. And I must say, you know, I came on right when this was happening and finished, and I think that the work that was done by previous boards and by Steve's team over the last 3 or 4 years is really remarkable, and we're leading the way for a number of other schools in our state and around the country. And so it was, you know, a privilege to hear you present that and that group, and I was very, you know,
And I
happy.
will note, Peter, that there was a step in there. We talked about collaboration with partners, and we did celebrate the support that the Cranberry Board and community gave us in making that change.
But, you know, and Bert Mandelbaum presented the data on the student needs for sleep, and it was so compelling, and there's so many studies now, and it's just so clear what schools should be really doing. And so the other districts really were kind of saying to, you know, us, how did you do it? How do you, you know, the nitty gritty, how much does it cost? How do you find the funds? How do you make it happen? So thank you for that. So that brings us to our committee reports, and I think the first committee would be equity. Michelle?
Thank you. We had an equity committee meeting on November 11th, and it was, fortunately, we were fortunate enough to have a report, the similar report, abbreviated, to the report on assessing student achievement through the test scores presentation that we had at our last meeting. The benefit of that was the quality of the discussion following that presentation. As the Annie and her team presented to the larger board, testing and test performance is only one element or one factor in terms of assessing how our students are doing. But there was a very broad discussion about how we can, what other things we can do to improve student performance, including discussions about supplemental programs like Saturday School and programs that are offered by the Princeton Children's Foundation and other outside foundations. But we also had a conversation about social cultural capital. This whole conversation about students perform better when they have a broader base of knowledge. And so we are testing students who may not have access to that broader base of knowledge through travel and through exposure to books and experiences that other kids don't have, or supplemental experiences outside the classroom, like, for example, the prevalence of students taking classes outside of school before they take a class in school. And so all these things result in, are reflected in test scores, but they're also reflected in a fundamental inequity within our system. And a lot of that we don't have any control over. So it was a great discussion. I think we collected a lot of input from that conversation. We also had a follow-up on the report from the previous meeting about some of the challenges of our undocumented students, and Steve responded to some of the concerns that were articulated at that previous meeting. Thank you, Steve, for for doing that. What I'm really excited about is our next Equity Committee meeting is going to be on December 16th, but it's going to be a joint meeting with SAC. And so Betsy and I have gotten together and we have a very exciting agenda planned for a lot of brainstorming and including a lot of stakeholders from around our community to talk about what is student achievement? What does that look like for our community, and how do we move forward to achieving that for all of our kids? So stay tuned.
Great. And I would say that's going to be an open meeting, right, for the board? It'll be noticed, so we can all come.
It will be in the evening, and it will be noticed, and everybody will be welcome.
Great.
And I'll just jump in that we hope all of our board colleagues will join us. I think most everyone either sits on equity and/or SAC and/or as an alternate, but everyone is invited, and we hope that you'll engage with us in this discussion.
Right. Great. Thank you. So next, we're facilities. Greg?
So we had a very busy few weeks where the Facilities Committee met actually the last 2 weeks in a row, both the 11th and the 18th of November. We have a lot of plans and a lot of work to do for the next phase of the referendum. So we've been really focused on that. I'm not going to say very much about that because we're actually going to have some details about it later on in the evening. Matt's going to be talking about the next bid proposal that we're going to be asked to approve. I did want to highlight, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague Brian, the fact that what we've promised to give updates to the general public and to the board, and we're planning on our December 17th board meeting to do a complete update of the timetable of the bid awards and of what the next phases of the work that's going to be done for summer 2020 and summer 2021. So I don't want to, we're working on details on that, and I want to wait until we get to that meeting before we delve into too many of those details. But the very first bid award for that is the one that we're looking at tonight. And with that, Brian, just wanted to know if you wanted to.
I can give some very quick highlights. 2 of the 3 summer projects are in final closeout. That's an administrative process. The punch lists and validation and change orders and credits is taking place for Riverside and also for the air conditioning at the PHS gym. The 3rd project, the electrical service at the elementary schools, is an open project because hopefully during the spring break and no later than the start of summer, new transformers will be installed at some of the schools and connected to the buildings. We have, in addition to the bid that will be considered later this meeting, bid packages are out for the JW project and for the HVAC at Littlebrook Community Park and Johnson Park. Walkthroughs for both of those projects took place yesterday. They were very well attended, which is good news. And Kathy and Scott got to spend their day walking around with contractors who we hope will bid on those projects and bid aggressively. The committee has discussed milestones to make sure that the projects have a high probability of staying on track, and that EPIC has some tools in their toolbox to hold the contractors accountable to meeting intermediate milestones during the course of the project. The committee was given a financial update by Matt. We still remain a little bit ahead of overall budget, a little bit behind in hard costs, a little bit ahead in soft costs, and that's something we continue to monitor very closely. And as Greg said, on December 17th, we'll have a big presentation, big but succinct, and bring everybody up to speed. And I'm happy to answer any questions after the meeting or between meetings. But it's moving well.
Thank you, Brian.
And the next Facilities Committee meeting will be before that, and that's December 9th at 8:30.
Thank you, Greg.
I had one quick comment. A community member came up to me, and they were wondering if we should have 2 facility meetings, one that's maintenance and everything on our buildings and one that's referendum. So I'm just sharing. I don't know.
So both are important. Maintenance in the kind of the regular maintenance, as well as implementing preventative maintenance schedules. And a fourth thing, even thinking about how we can operate more sustainably. And so the decision was, rather than have two separate meetings, to have 2 meetings a month and focus on both. So we did have one meeting where the focus was at least 50% on maintenance, and Dave Harding gave that presentation to the full board. But at every single meeting, there is a section for Dave to talk about maintenance. And as we get through the next wave of bids, we'll have more time, and more importantly, Dave will have more time. Well, he's got QSAC, but when he does have more time, we look forward to really deeply engaging about maintenance and preventative maintenance, and opportunities to hopefully make sure everything's performing at the highest level possible, our systems, our equipment, and our staff, and also that if there are any opportunities to be more efficient and save money, that we aggressively pursue them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Bill, you can talk about finance, please.
Briefly. So we met yesterday here. We went over a new prescription plan that will offer savings compared to our old plan, although that's still a little bit in flux. We were presented an audit of our financials, where we received our 22nd consecutive Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. And this provides a practical benefit to the Princeton taxpayer by having a positive impact on the interest rates of our bonds. Then we started our review of the next budget, and spent 2 hours doing all of that. And our next meeting is December 16th at 2 p.m. at Valley Road.
Thank you, Bill. Debbie, personnel, please.
The Personnel Committee met on Wednesday, November 13th. After lots of discussions about ways to reduce substitutes in PHS, I'm happy to report that in December, PHS will implement a pilot program of reducing substitutes for phys ed classes. Ms. Baxter will update the committee in January on how this went. The committee has started to discuss updating the non-tenure review process, which takes place in the spring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? So what is this pilot program? I mean, what are you going to do differently?
So the whole idea came from Jessica Baxter. We presented that we'd like to do something. She came up with this, and she said there's ways to have one teacher kind of work with different classes. And we're kind of waiting for her. Like, she's implementing it. She took the lead on it, and we're going with what she says.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot of detail.
I actually
but
think in the minutes, your minutes have, it's attached to your minutes, there's a description if you want to see
Of
more
how she
detail.
wants to do it, yeah.
And this time that it's a 3-week period this year between Thanksgiving and the winter break. So it was, I believe we may have even suggested that using that as a pilot time. And we had a slightly different suggestion. And she came back to us and said, love the pilot idea. Here's the way I'd like to try it. So we're really glad that we're trying something.
Super. Thank you. Okay. Greg and Jess, policy?
I'll take a quick lead on that, just very briefly. There's 4 policies for second reading that are continuation, the policies in personnel that we already looked at last time for first reading. There have been no changes recommended, so we're asking people to take a look at them and vote for the second reading. We are working with, at the request of, the Technology Department and the Technology Steering Committee at looking at our technology policies. And so that's what we spent the last meeting focusing on, and we will have some revisions on a number of policies in that area shortly to the board for first reading. And finally, very, very quickly, something that our board president already talked about is there's a resolution tonight on adding non-voting members from our education unions, education associations to policy committee. This is in the spirit of the labor management collaborative that was already referenced. And part of it was at the initiative of members of our unions who came to us and said, you know, we'd rather look at policy changes before they're done and not afterwards, and let's leverage everyone's knowledge. This is something that we don't need a change in policy because we can already do that under our current policies, But Policy Committee thought that this was a very good idea, and as a way of moving things forward, we're going to ask for standing representatives from each of our education associations to be part of policy going forward. And so that's what we're asking people to take a look at as a resolution. It's a pilot in our eyes for something that maybe other committees can do, and it's the type of things that hopefully there'll be more of as we continue to work together through the collaborative. And then very briefly, I just wanted to hand it over to my co-chair.
I want to, we've said this before, I want to again remind the community of the November 25th session at the PAC from 7 to 9 p.m. Part of our efforts in the district to be addressing issues of teen vaping, and the program is Teen Vaping, What You Need to Know. Will include the director of tobacco dependency program at Rutgers, and again, it's November 25th. The district is co-sponsoring this with the Board of Health and Corner House, and hope that parents will feel free to join us there.
Thank you, Jess. So, student achievement, Betsy?
Thank you. The Student Achievement Committee met Friday, November 15th at 11:30. The minutes from October were approved. Stephanie Greenberg, Supervisor of the Humanities, attended to share new literature choice books that PHS English teachers grades 9 through 12 have identified they'd like to read with some or all of their classes. This is teacher-led change, and the department was seeking board support to update these reading lists. I have since sent the full board list to I've sent the full board the list that was shared at our meeting. Many of us want to read many of the books on the list. Mickey Christofoli attended Student Achievement to share an update on the RFP process for our upcoming special education audit. Those in attendance discussed calling this process a more positive program evaluation rather than an audit, so we will consider doing that. Two companies had responded to the original RFP, and the submissions were reviewed by a committee who then decided to reissue the RFP with some changes. So considering feedback from the special education PTO led to the inclusion of more specific expectations, a more detailed rubric, the inclusion of a stakeholders group as part of this process, and the opportunity to interview parents. The program evaluation will culminate in a presentation to the full BOE, which we hope is prior to the end of the school year. Krista Gallion, the Director of Technology and Innovation in the district, attended to share an inventory of our devices throughout the district. Of note, many of our Chromebooks, as in 1,300, are nearing their 6.5-year lifespan, nearing the end of their lifespan. So our district and many others will be needing to figure out a solution for these aging Chromebooks. We also discussed topics such as technology needs of our elementary teachers, now that there are technology-heavy components to the curriculum in math, social studies, and science. Technology needs of special education classrooms specifically, our MAP program to provide access to parents and families who do not have internet access or devices, the possibility or limitations of parents supplying devices for their children, and the needs of the district for a new PA and phone system. So Krista shared with us, budget is tight, educators are asking for more devices, yet the technology budget is struggling just to maintain and update the devices that we have. We thanked Krista for being with us and offered our support for the creation of a more comprehensive technology plan. And finally, the committee reviewed the most recent drafts of school year calendars for 2021 and 21-22. We don't have those calendars today, but due to the referendum-related projects taking place over the next 2 summers, we can say that the start date for students will not take place prior to Labor Day until at least the fall of 2022. The committee discussed the need for contingency plans related to the timing of our referendum projects, which will take place in our school buildings over the course of the next 2 summers. The final versions of the calendars are being reviewed by association leadership, and we will likely put them before the board for a first read at our December 17th meeting. That does have to be it has to have 2 readings, so the calendars we're hoping will be final for the public in January. So we adjourn to closed session at the end of our open session. We meet next at on December 13th at 11:30 when the first hour is open to the public. We invite you to attend, and of course, don't forget about the combined equity and student achievement meeting on December 16th at 7. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Betsy. Any questions?
One of the issues that came up at the student achievement meeting relative to the special ed program review was the budget for that.
Yep.
And I was wondering if you could comment, how that was arrived at. I mean, given the importance of special ed the breadth and depth, the need to have some metrics, all of those things. I'm not sure the budget was adequate, and maybe, Steve, you can talk about that.
We did that in consult with Tom Benanzi, who is our interim BA, and in looking at what other districts had done in the same vein. We actually, you mentioned we had 2 responses to the first RFP, and at least one came in on budget in terms of the amount that we were budgeting for that review. So we'll have to see what comes back. I think we extended the date to December
I don't
6th,
know.
I believe.
Is it the 6th? Okay. Great.
Okay, great. So next, we move on to our first public forum. And I will just note that it is for comments on the agenda and non-agenda items. We wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity earlier on in the meeting for people to talk if people come, and we don't want them to have to sit and wait through the whole meeting to talk on non-agenda items. So if there's anyone here who would like to speak, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, respect the time of others. We have a 15-minute maximum of this portion. And please state your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Paul Johnson. Have 3 kids in the school system, 4th, 2nd, and sophomore in high school. Kind of all over the place. Been waiting to come, but so I'll start with the least of my concerns at the beginning, and just work up. Just always had an issue at Community Park with the facilities. Obviously, I have 2 kids there, and know that their playground as well as area I actually do the after school program has always been difficult to play on. The field, it's a thing that if you seed it, it's going to get messed up. I've also offered my support in the past to raise funds to help put a turf field or something there, which would be more, accessible to Mr. Chorba, so he's not taking classes all the way to the park and losing half their gym period. I'm definitely open for that. I can leave my information, and hopefully we can. It's just absolutely dangerous. There's rocks, there's boulders that kids are falling over, and I just don't want, these kids to get hurt. Second, pretty simple. Have a sophomore who wanted to add a class. It literally took 3 weeks, and, though I didn't go to Princeton High myself, I've been, I'm born and raised in Princeton. I did go to elementary schools here, then went to Hun, but I've never seen a 3-week add-drop period. And when I spoke to the guidance counselor, they told me that it was an issue of connecting with all the heads of the department and this. I said, this is something that should take no less than a week. My kid's kind of stuck between classes, and I don't understand how it takes 3 weeks. And, so I went to University of Virginia, which is a pretty big school, and it didn't even take that long. So, hopefully we can find a way to streamline that process. Then my last one, my mentor, the late Jim Floyd, who many of us know, talked about holding on to the values of what this community meant and the principles of inclusion, equality, and diversity. I always come to you as a citizen, a parent, as well as a coach. I've coached college soccer for years. I'm now a personal trainer, but I deal with a lot of high-end athletes and athletes in general, many of which go to the high school here and go on to play college sports, guys and girls. So the issue has always been, for me, and now it's become more pressing, an issue of accountability of what our teams look like. And does it reflect the demographic that it once did and the demographic of Princeton? And, I'm speaking from a soccer standpoint, and I know other parents that have come to me and expressed concern for other sports, but it hasn't. And it looks a lot different. If we look at the team that originally won the state championship in '95, now it looks nothing like it. And kids are saying that they don't want to play, and, and these are kids in the community that I know and kids that my son tells me, as well as many other pressing issues. Obviously, I have 3 minutes, but I will send an email out to you guys and let you know. Because there's issues, and we stand at a point where we say, we get behind the argument that I didn't know, or, oh, that wasn't apparent to me, I wasn't here then. Well, these are some things the head of our department should know, and they should make it their point, whether we're treating the kids the same way, or whether the standards are the same. There's been issues of, and I will never mention names because a lot of these kids play for me, and I respect what happened and what didn't happen, but there's been issues of harassment and bullying, where weren't reported so the kids could play in games because they knew they weren't going to be able to play. There's been issues of, the retention from year to year, kids playing and then not playing. I mean, everybody, I know I've shared it with you before, the human capital model and the correlation between athletic involvement and academic, excellence and what it does for a kid. And there's kids that are quitting, there's kids that are planning on quitting next year, that have come to me. There was also, we experienced a year with the boys soccer team where we didn't finish the season with a single senior. And there was one minority on the team. We come from a community where there's plenty of people that play soccer and that's their native, sport.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we're not seeing that anymore is pretty sad in this community. And this is something we've always looked at, and there's something we've always paid attention to. But when I go to the people that I feel that are in charge of that thing, and they tell me, "Oh, I didn't know," or "No, that's not the case," we've got to be better, and we've got to do something. And obviously, I have a list of points that I'm not going to bore you with tonight, but I will definitely share
Please
them.
send them to us. Yeah.
I mean, from issues of kids that started as captains and didn't finish the year for various reasons, and I'll break them down in the email. To I've coached for years, and I actually went after the Rutgers job this year. So I get coaches from all the top schools in the country, or calls from all of them, to ask me about kids in the area. And never once in my career have I had my son, who's been playing since he was 5, call me at the middle of practice. And this is an issue that is far beyond needing to be addressed, and there's just various issues throughout and there's simple things as well as in our athletic department, like why are the kids not wearing the same thing? These kids all purchase things, or we could find ways to raise funds for them to look the same in practice and do the same thing. So I think hopefully we can connect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then figure out what we can do with it.
Please send it to us so we can.
Okay.
We would love to hear everything you've got to tell us. So thank you for coming, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you. Rod Montgomery from William Patterson Court, the curmudgeon taxpayer. Speaking as always in what the positive psychology people term the active destructive mode from a position of hopeful pessimism. The meeting of this board on the 29th of October drove me near to despair as member after member of the administration reported in considerable depth on the results of the high-stakes testing mandated by the state. Notice that I say high stakes, not standardized. Standardized is not a curse word. High stakes is the curse word. These tests are almost useless unless you use them to calibrate your formative assessments, which I believe is very difficult because it is hard to tell at what point in the learning of each student the high-stakes test is administered, so you don't really even know whether what was tested was ever taught, let alone learned. So that whole business just drives me to despair. But at the end of math supervisor Stephanie Tidwell's presentation, she said that she and her colleagues plan to investigate the math workshop model, which I've not investigated in detail, but I believe it's similar to the reading and writing workshop model, which I've looked at a little bit and found quite impressive. So there's some hope there. Then the board members' comments further relieved my despair. Mr. McDonald questioned the AP cult. He didn't use the term AP cult, but that's what it is, and it needs questioning. Thank you, and please do. Then Ms. Deutsch and Ms. Tuck-Ponder asked about alternative assessment, alternatives to the high-stakes mandated tests. And again, Ms. Tidwell described work that she has done in conjunction with the district in New York on alternative forms of assessment, which she hopes to seed into this district. Again, I found that very hopeful. And finally, Ms. Kozak emphasized formative assessments to guide instruction, which are the only assessments that will really help the learning, which is the whole purpose of this place. There can be plenty of teaching without any learning at all. So keep focused on the learning, and things may get better. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your hard work for Princeton students.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Okay, are there any other people who would like to speak? If not, we will move on. And I think the next item is, we're going to start with some of the consent items. And we're on the policy issue, the policies that are up for second reading. Are there any questions or any discussion, or should we move through those? Particular questions? No? Item L. L1 is policy committee membership to include designated non-voting members of the educational associations as described by Greg. That's another consent item. Any discussion? Item M1, appointments, the personnel items as are listed in the agenda. Are there any questions? And there's a number of listings here. Sorry, M2 is resignations. Again, a consent item. The resignations as listed. And then we have M3, retirements. M4, leaves of absence.
Can I just say a word?
Yes, retirements.
M3.
Yes.
At the end of this year, we are going to lose a wealth of teaching experience from this district. We have Betsy Stokes at the high school, ESL teacher, 27 years of experience. Amy Perlmutter, who has been at Littlebrook in fourth grade? Fifth grade.
24 years.
24 years, incredibly dedicated to her students and to her craft. I've known her for years. She had kids in my school in Hopewell, and then Patty Lieberman at the high school, 19 years, and thousands of students has she guided onto life and career and college choices. And so I know that a lot of people are going to really honor the work that they have done and be saddened by the loss, but wishing them well at the end of this year.
Thank you. Okay. Item 4, leaves of absence. Item 5, student services hourly work. Item 6, curriculum and instruction hourly appointments. Item 7, 6th period compensation. Item 8, substitutes. Item 9, EPS stipends. Item 10, vacation buyback. Item 11, other personnel items, which are 6 leave bank given donated dates and a volunteer driver and a tuition reimbursement. Then we go on to item N, curriculum and instruction. And number 1, learning ally. Is it consent? Number two we're not including tonight. Number 3, New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuing Review, the QSAC. Steve touched on. Number 4, student field trips. Number 5, student overnight trips. And then brings us to O, student services special ed. First is educational placement of special needs pupils, 2019-20, the first one. Second one, professional consulting services, Michelle Robbins. Number 3, Professional Consulting Services Health Master Holdings. That brings us to P, Business Finance Plant and Transportation Operations. Number 1 would be the financial reports. Number 2 would be the bid award to Shorelands Construction. Would anyone like to comment on that? Matt?
Sure, I'll just give a brief overview. It's the fourth bid for the December 2018 referendum. It's for the security upgrades at the elementary schools, securities and doors. We received 4 bids. The low bidder, within the statutory time frame, declared a mathematical error. So we're obligated, if they show, it was clear. So we awarded it to the second lowest bidder, which is on tonight, for Shorelands Construction, Inc., for a total of $1,543,000.
Thank you. Anything else you want to say about that? Any questions? Discussion? Okay. It's a consent item. And number 3 is the fire and evacuation drill. Number 4, travel and related expenses. And that brings us to the consent vote. So could I have a motion on the consent vote? Greg, second? Evelyn? Peter? Any discussion? I think we will do a roll call. And again, the motion is that the Board of Ed approve all action consent items as noted in all sections of this agenda as appropriate, and that the board authorize the administration to execute all necessary documents.
Who was the second on that?
It was Peter.
Thank you.
Peter, we're playing.
My computer is acting funny
We're
today.
messing with you. It's definitely Peter.
That was not a joke. It's my computer. Beth Barrand,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Daniel Dart,
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch,
Yes.
Bill Hare,
Yes.
Betsy Calver-Baglio,
Yes.
Brian McDonald,
Yes.
Gregory Stankiewicz,
Yes.
Michelle Tuck Ponder,
Yes.
and Peter Katz.
Yes.
The consent agenda passes.
Thank you. And I want to compliment you, Matt, on the agenda itself, although it seems like I'm hesitating as I read through it. It actually is getting more and more organized, and I find that we're able to get our work done in a much more efficient manner. So thank you for your kind of
Well, it's a
work on
collaboration between all of us. Thank you.
this. I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that.
Yes, we appreciate that.
We are now in our second public comment time. If there's anyone else who would like to speak. If there is no one there, then we can move on to the closing comments. Does anyone have any closing comments? Yes, Brian?
After the October 29th board meeting, it didn't sit all that well with me that we couldn't come to clear consensus on the communication agreement. And I know that one of the concerns was specifically with respect to a single sentence about the role of board members in the public and how they were to speak. And I just hope we can revisit that and wonder, as 2 board members suggested, that we consider eliminating or revising that provision so that we might come closer to full consensus on the agreement that we worked hard on. I don't know if tonight's the time to do that, perhaps another time, but I know that there has been some discussion about that. I really hope that we can take the time to see if we can find something that works for everybody.
Right. Is there any other thoughts on that around the table?
I also hope that we can come to that either by, I think that there was some question about the wording of one sentence, and I think the spirit of the document was that we establish the parameters around which our communications take place, and I think it's important that we're able to do that. And so I also hope that we can revisit that sentence or take the sentence out and kind of stand behind the rest of it, because I think it's important.
Thank you. And I guess I will point out we can do whatever we want with it because it's not a policy. It's just a guideline that we used as part of our work together in our public board workshops earlier this year. And we've been using this guideline, I think, very successfully all year, I think there's been a number of times when we all kind of try to remember our roles, and sometimes we step across as we interact with each other, and then we go back and we say, yes, we talked about this, and I think it's helped us a lot this year. So, yeah, if there's a willingness among the board, we can come to some agreement on trying to clarify that language. I think it's a great idea.
Do you know how many other districts maybe have approved it the way it is? I was just curious.
And we can ask the NJSBA people. It was in their form, that the language that is in question.
No, I know it's from them. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I would just say that they present it in the spirit of a broad best practices.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody.
That's right.
So
It
that was
doesn't
my
work.
takeaway.
Yeah, exactly. So if the board wants to consider that and maybe come back to it at our next meeting, does that make sense? Okay, good.
So what, email what we wanted to say? I can't find it.
Well, does
Or-
anyone want to take the lead on?
I mean, I'm happy to recirculate kind of.
And Jess did reach out to me, which I really appreciate, and
Yeah.
we had a couple back and forth emails.
Yeah, so maybe,
Share it to the whole board again and take input and see if we can.
find something that works.
around
That would be
something
great.
that works for everybody.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Yes?
In the past, we've had a lot of criticism about the district website. And I just wanted to say that when it's bad, we don't have a problem complaining. And when it gets better, we sometimes neglect to say, hey, it's much better. So I want to be the voice that says, it really is beautifully done and more easily maneuverable. I can find what I want. And I just want to give compliments to whoever is responsible for that. That's all.
Elizabeth, we see you back
Yeah.
there. I know you're not alone, but thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, if anyone's out there watching and wants to give us additional comments, we welcome them. It's always a work in progress, but it certainly does look a lot better. Anything else? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn? Dan?
So move.
Second? Jess? All in favor? Show of hands, yes, unanimous, motion passed. Meeting adjourned.